Hello there, Ray here, and welcome back. In today's video, we are going to be taking a look at 13 new ways to automatically farm old items. In the last video, we looked at new mobs, items, as well as blocks, and even biomes that are in this 1.16 Nether update, and showed how you can automatically farm these new things. In today's video, we're going to be looking at old things that could be farmed in the past, but new ways of farming them that just came out with 1.16 Nether update. Besides just being an update to the Nether biome, there is a lot of other small things which allows it to be easier to farm up old items as well. But some of the changes actually make it harder to farm up old items. Everything that we talk about in today's video, there is an individual video that goes into way more detail than this one is. Also, there is world downloads for everything that you see in these videos, so you guys can build it up for block in those videos, which are all linked in the description. Now, everything I design my channel is for the Java edition. If you guys would like to learn about the Bedrock edition and farms for that, make sure to check out Silent Whisper. He has a great channel covering all the new 1.16 farms. You'll find his link down below. And take this time to go ahead and hit the subscribe button, as less than 30% of everybody who watches my videos is subscribed. I have over 600 videos on my YouTube channel all about cool things you can do in vanilla survival Minecraft. And if you're looking for simple farms, I have a great place that has over 140 unique simple farms. Now let's take a look at all these changes that affect automating farms. So the first farm we're taking a look at is my simple wither skeleton farm, which uses the new piglin mob, as well as a new change that they made to wither roses. This farm is great for going ahead and getting tons of wither skeleton skulls without having to do too much work. You can see that this thing not only provides wither skeleton skulls, but also whole bones and tons of stone swords. Now, since the original video where I showed this farm off where wither skeletons would run towards the piglin and then fall down into the hole, they did some changes where most mobs will not spawn on top of wither roses anymore. The reasoning behind this change was the same reason to do with magma blocks. Essentially, if a mob is immune to fire damage, they're able to spawn on magma blocks. It used to be that pretty much any mob could spawn on top of a magma block, but then they changed it so only mobs that are immune to fire can actually spawn on top of them. And this is why I use magma blocks in my gold farm to prevent the normal piglins from spawning on it, since they're not immune to fire, but the zombified piglins are, therefore they'll be the only thing to spawn on it. Also, zombie reinforcements cannot spawn on top of magma blocks anymore. You shouldn't have any zombies coming inside of your gold farms. After they made this change, people noticed that there was an exception, which was wither roses, which mobs were spawning inside of, despite not being immune to the damaging effects of the wither rose. So they changed it so wither roses only allow mobs to spawn inside of them if it's a mob that's immune to the wither effect. Currently, the only mob we have that does this is the wither skeleton, so they can actually spawn inside of here. This also means the farm will no longer produce stuff like normal skeletons, zombified piglins, or blazes or magma cubes. Now the only thing you'll get is wither skeletons. Now if you're wondering how to farm up the other mobs I just talked about, I have individual videos that go over those in the description. So because we don't get any pigment in here, I removed the egg that used to be above this guy's head. I also removed some extra blocks around here to protect the egg, and I went in here and placed in this cobble wall. During our testing, we noticed that wither skeletons would try to pathfind here now, which isn't a good thing. An easy fix for that is just to occupy this place with a block. And then they'll see that spot where they want to stand is occupied, and then they will just walk around it instead. Now, initially we thought that the rates of this farm would actually increase for the number of skulls per hour, just because there is no other mobs spawning besides wither skeleton. But that is not how the developers implemented the change. What they did is they actually made it so that all other mobs would just fail to spawn. And then when it's the wither skeleton's turn, they go ahead and spawn in. So the rates don't actually change any from the original video. It still averages around 40 skulls per hour. It also produces about 2,000 bones per hour and about 650 coal per hour. These are pretty good numbers, so you could definitely use this as a bone meal source or even a fuel source. Now, I also added a little device here at the bottom as a request by Impulse SV. He was asking if it's possible to get rid of any XPs which is produced from this farm. This is because the wither skeletons are actually killed by player means using a dog. So when the wither skeleton falls, it falls in here. This dog will kill it. The XPs do get produced, even though the player won't be here to pick it up. So by running this farm, it produces around like 300 entities at all times, just because the XPs sit there until they do spawn. So I added a fix for this, which would get rid of the XPs, and that is a piston that will push any of them off of this little platform here over into some lava. If we do F3 plus B, we can see the hitboxes of the XP. You can see it's quite big. It actually is high enough up so this piston extends. It's going to push it over here. Then it's going to fall downwards, pass over top of this hopper minecart, and continue downwards until it falls into this lava. And the way that this piston is activated is anytime there is quite a few items that come in here all at once, let's say a bunch of bones come in here, then it's big enough signal that it will activate this comparator, and then that change is being detected by this observer, which is pulsing this piston. So it doesn't happen every time, but anytime there is few items that fall in all at once. And the center was also changed. Instead of using soul sand in here, which mobs could spawn on, I switched it out with a block that can't spawn in mobs. That is also less than a full block, so the hopper can pick up items off of it. And it's also not a full meter wide, meaning I can actually set this minecart on the very edge of it and the dog won't fall off. The reason why the dog is just kind of floating here is because we want the XPs to pass through him without there being blocks to prevent them from falling. Now it's possible that there could be items on top of this that don't necessarily get picked up. So if I drop a bunch of items here, you can see that they could get pushed off, maybe in rare circumstances, and pushed over here. And that is what this hopper minecart is for. In case any items get shoved the same direction as XPs, they don't get destroyed because they get pulled by the hopper minecart prior to falling into the lava. And those items end up over here in this chest. Though this chest rarely gets used, in case you don't want to lose those items, this minecart is sitting partly on top of this hopper, so it doesn't fall into the lava either. The dog itself can't actually fall into the lava because if he gets pushed backwards, he's actually just going to be on top of this trapdoor. I also have some trapdoors which I placed in here to prevent any XPs from hanging up on the edges. You can place these type of trapdoors by placing them in areas where there's no entities and then opening them. And by doing this, you can have the dog being inside of the trapdoor. All the items are collected and put into these chests down below. One thing to keep in mind is to make sure to use your own dog. In the role download here, this is technically my dog, therefore you will not get wither skulls from this dog. You have to put in your own dog. So keep that in mind when you're running a server on multiplayer. Put in multiple dogs. There is room here on like this side as well as this side to put in more people's dogs. So the person that AFKs this has to be the person who owns the dog. Now the best place to build this is in a lava lake if you're trying to go for like 100% spawn proofing the area around it. Or you could also build this in biomes that have nerfed spawning, which includes the Soul Sand Valley and the Warped Forest. By building it in those biomes, the mob spawning is a lot less than normal. So if any mobs would have to spawn outside of your farm, they just don't spawn in very large quantities. I cover this in 2 snapshot videos explaining this nerf that they did to the Soul Sand Valley, and they later also kind of buffed those biomes, but it is still better than building them in like another waste. Now a lot of times you guys ask, can you hold a looting sword in these type of farms where other things kill it other than the player? The answer is always no. Looting only works if you have the looting sword in your main hand and the last damage that is done to the mob is considered done by the looting sword. There's only a couple ways you can trick this, by like having a bow in your offhand and shooting it, or by having like potions in your offhand, using those to do the last damage. So it doesn't work if you're holding it for like dogs or there's like a pigman farm. Next up guys, we're going to take a look at iron farms. We're actually going to take a look at these in the newest version, which is a snapshot. This is going to be a snapshot for 1.16.2. In this recent snapshot, they did change some stuff that does affect iron farms. It doesn't break them, like I said in the review video, but it does mean we have to tweak our iron farms a little bit. So we're here in the newest snapshot, and this is my quick iron farm. It's easily built up in a matter of minutes. You can see everything's working just fine with the villagers and the zombie and them getting scared. The thing that did change is how mobs will now die if they're in a situation where there's lava and water next to each other. And you guys mentioned in my comments that this farm wasn't working quite right, so today I will be showing you guys how you can tweak it so it will work. This only affects the new 1.16.2 version. The old version still works fine. You can see Iron Golem spawned in, and you can see that it is working. We got the guy. He is burning in lava and he will die, and his items will drop downwards and get picked up by this hopper here, placed into this chest down below. I got a command block telling us that we're getting iron. The only change that I made to this farm is 2 little things. What used to be here is a slab, and the water also used to be right here. So let's see what happens when Iron Golem spawns in. You can see that he is now touching the water plus lava at the same time. The change they made is that if the mob is touching water and lava, they will not burn. Now this could be useful if you're in survival. You could technically be inside of lava. As long as you're touching water at the same time, you're just fine. But this does mean any farm where we have mobs being killed by water that's pushing them into lava do need to be changed. So this isn't working. What I did is I moved the water source back farther. So the water right now is kind of thick. You can see it's almost filling up most of the screen. If I go ahead and remove this water, you see that the iron golem is now taking damage. This is because he got boosted on top of the slab, but the water so short is no longer touching him. So he's able to just burn in the lava. So that does work. If you want to put some hoppers around it to pick up the items, you can do that. If you just want to use one hopper, you can just put in one pickle. And these sea pickles are extremely easy to get. Just find an ocean and break it off. Now, not only will the iron golem be able to burn in lava, any loot that also falls in the water will be able to get picked up by this hopper. No matter where it falls, it'll get collected. There you go. You see it got washed in there and got put into the chest. So it was really easy just to move the water back 2 blocks diagonally backwards. So it was there and went there and then all the way back in there. Just far enough so it's really thin when it comes over here. Pretty easy fix, and the farm itself works the same. So the next iron farm we're taking a look at is the super fast one using the gateway portals. This was a project by Asquaredrt. And it used a weird mechanic that we noticed early days of the 1.14 iron farms, which is if you unload the villagers and reload them, they would reset the time in which they want to spawn in an iron golem. Peg 5 took advantage of this by putting the player through a gateway portal and unloading it and then going back into the same area again, allowing the villagers to try to summon more iron golems. Now they did change it so that reloading an area won't increase the speed in which iron golems are spawned in. So essentially villagers now remember how much time has actually went by, and they will wait for that 30 seconds before spawning in another iron golem. What does it mean for this very fast iron farm? It means a couple different things. So first off, the villagers themselves pretty much remember everything when they're loaded in. So they remember that they can still see this guy. And before we could just hop in and out of this portal and the villagers would kind of forget about this guy for a little bit. They would be able to sleep in their beds, which is important for iron golems to spawn in. They do have to sleep every so often. So now the villagers don't sleep because they know this guy is here scaring them. So I put in a little device here, which every time an iron golem spawns in, it just covers up his head for a little bit. So if it is nighttime, then they can go ahead and hop in the beds. So we solved that problem. There's another problem, which is the way the farm worked is we have a lot of villagers almost too close to each other. And what we would do is when we would unload the chunks and come back again, the villagers would all synchronize when they want to produce an iron golem. This is great. So we have 6 villagers and 6 iron golems would be produced each time. Now what happens is they don't all synchronize. Technically this village here could put an iron golem right around here, and then this village over here could detect that iron golem and fail to summon in their own. You'll notice down here we only have a few iron golems spawning in, and they're not all spawning in at the same time either. So the rates are decreased because they're not synchronized. The main thing that decreases the rates now in 1.16.2 is villagers not producing iron golems after being reloaded. So if I go through this portal and I go back through this portal again, the villagers remember everything and they don't summon in all their iron golems immediately. But overall, there seems to be some problems to do with gateway portals in general. Like you can see, this minecart here is clearly inside of the gateway portal, but it's not teleporting. And there, it finally teleported. We go to this side, we go ahead and ride the minecart. You can see it goes into the gateway portal, but doesn't teleport. It's super inconsistent. Sometimes it'll teleport after like 1 second. Sometimes it takes like 20 seconds to teleport. Same thing for this one. We came to this side eventually, and now it's taking forever to go through this portal. Now they did do some changes to the way gateway portals work, and it seems like they're still a bit buggy. There, we finally got through, and then now we're stuck in again. So hopefully they'll fix them before the full release of 1.16.2. Now besides all those changes, there's actually another change, which we talked about earlier, about how mobs that are inside of lava as well as water don't actually burn. So the killing chamber had to change. I just put in some cobwebs and drop the water down. That way the iron golems get stuck in the cobwebs and then they are technically not in the water, and then they just burn up and drop their loot. You give me space out the cobwebs to save on them, but they are really easy to get now with just a normal shears going into the mine shaft. You can grab a whole bunch of these. This fixes the killing chamber. You can make this farm still work. It's just going to have a lot less iron than it did before. Next, we're going to take a look at 1.16 AFK Fish Farms. Now, during the snapshots, we came out with this video showcasing 4 new AFK Fish Farms for 1.16, despite them nerfing it so you would no longer get treasure enchantments. Now, 2 of our AFK Fish Farms actually used a really weird bug that bobbers that fell onto areas where there was no water would just retain their fish without losing it. So essentially, whenever a fish would pull this bobber down, the bobber would sit on top of this boat. And even though it visually appears to be up there, it would be actually down here, and this would allow you to pull it in and get a fish. Now you can see it still works. We still technically get a fish by doing this, but we're using this to actually get treasure enchantments like enchanted books and name tags, enchanted bows. Now they actually came back and fixed this as well. You can see we still got normal loot by doing this method, like that fish we got, but we'll no longer get treasure enchantment because now it makes sure that the bobber is inside of water when you pull it in. So this farm as well as this farm no longer works for getting looting. So the first farm we showed actually still works, which uses a timer. So I'll show you guys how this one works. You just sit on the edge of this hopper here. You'd be in survival. And you just start out by throwing a rod into that tripwire there. And you just hold down right click up against this note block here. And then there is a timer which will flick the trapdoor, allowing you to pull in your fishing rod and then release it on a very specific time. And we did some calculations, and this time is the best time for having the highest chance of having something on your fishing hook when you pull it in. I just got myself a fish. And this is a way we can now get treasure enchantments. All the items that you get from fishing would end up in this chest over here. You can always tweak these timings if you're on a multiplayer server. Now this farm is just dedicated if you're trying to go after those treasure loot. If you want to just go after normal like fishing stuff, then a simple farm like this works just fine, where you sit here and you right click up against this pressure plate just in the corner like that, and you hit a note block or something similar in the background. You can see I already got a fish. Lord Music showed me something cool that you could do. Something cheaper than a note block, which is just a chest that has a block on top of it, so you can't technically open it up. So you can do the same thing. You can right click on it too. Next, we're going to take a look at my quick witch farm. This thing can be built up in less than an hour, and there's no redstone to this thing at all. It's really simple. I did see you guys comment saying that this witch farm wasn't working in the world download. Now, this was a problem to do with snapshots. In one snapshot, the witch bounty boxes weren't producing witches. I went ahead and fixed the world download. It had nothing to do with the farm, just to do with a bug in that version. And this does use a witch hut. Then using that, you can just go downwards, put in 2 gaps, put another floor, 2 gaps, another floor. And the witch huts are 7 by 9, so make sure you put the rectangle facing the right direction. The farm itself is very simple. We have a little flange here to increase the spawn rates. Just make sure to keep all other land around it removed or lit up. Make sure slimes don't spawn it so it doesn't interfere with your rates. You can once in a while get drowns to spawn in here, but they don't really interfere too much because if they walk out a little ways away from the center, they will despawn instantly. And you can even find witch huts that have pretty much no land around them, so you don't even have to do any lighting up like this one or terraforming. You never want to AFK directly above it. The AFK point for this one is actually right here, but way up in the air. That way they can spawn inside there, but plus we're away from that land over there. Now in the past, you did have to worry about having witch farms that had non-swamp biomes inside of them. So if you go to this corner right here, look at F3, right here where it says biome, this says river biome. If we go over here, it's swamp. In the past, normal mobs used to be able to spawn in these places, but in the new versions, you don't have to worry about this. Herb looked into the Minecraft code, and now anything that's inside of a witch bounty box, no matter what biome it is, will produce witches. You also can choose just blue ice or packed ice. You just can't use normal ice. So this will be the new world download. Next up, we're going to take a look at my quick gold and XP farm. This thing is very simple and uses a big spawning platform for all the pigmen to spawn on, and an iron golem to make them mad, therefore they drop XPs. Plus they also die, so they drop gold too. I heard some of you guys say in the comments that this was not working. I think all you had to do is turn on the game rules. The mob loot was set to true instead of false. If it's set to false, it just means that mobs, when they die, won't drop a loot, which is great for testing, but this is not how it normally is in survival. And the XPs are also dropped. So now the new world download should have that fix. So in case you guys use it, you won't be confused by that. Everything else about the gold farm works just fine. I know some guys ask if gold farms still work that drop XP to a player while they're AFKing, even though they're not technically attacking them. And yes, they do still work. I have a video explaining why gold farms broke and how they went ahead and reverted it back. You can find this down in the description. So with this guy hitting them, they will drop XPs, but they won't drop the gold ingots because it's technically not a player kill. You still get gold nuggets. Now the part that makes this new to 1.16 is you can actually swap this guy out with a Zoglin, who does a much better job at aggroing these guys without killing them. Next, we're going to take a look at Obsidian Farms for 1.16. 1.16 they change it so that when items drop through entrance and portal, they will reset to this Obsidian platform, which is a platform you land on when you come here to End Dimension. This allows you to get infinite amounts of obsidian, and I love using withers to automate stuff. I'll show you guys how you can use withers to automate this process of breaking the obsidian. But the farm itself works just the same. I got wither in there, and you got the wither cage, and you got his targets, which are over here. Just make sure you pay good attention to everything I talk about in those videos that cover withers, because they're only safe if you follow those steps. I do hear people saying that withers are not safe inside of wither cages, but this is just not true. A lot of people that say this have no clue what they're even talking about. So if you see people saying that, make sure to tell them to rewatch all my videos about withers and wither cages, because there is tons of things to learn about them, because education is the best way to address this disinformation. Also, make sure you're playing on vanilla. I know a lot of people that watch my videos don't even know that they're playing on like Spigot or some other modded variation of vanilla. Make sure to always check out the world downloads so you can see exactly how everything goes. I always make sure the world downloads work, and that way if you guys use them the same way I do, you guys will have the same results. There has been a lot of changes to withers over the years, so make sure you guys stay up to date on all those changes. I also came out with a 4 wither setup, so it's using the entire Obsidian platform. This thing uses a lot of redstone. It's more of the advanced system, and it does all the flipping and trapdoor switching all automatically. And it also works. It's pretty cool what you can do with redstone and a lot of time. So you guys have a choice between a simple obsidian farm or a pretty complex one here. Next up, we're taking a look at my simple ink farm as well as kelp farm all in one. This thing is extremely simple, yet produces tons of both of these items. It uses a new 1.16 feature which allows squid and normal fish to be in 2 separate mob caps. So we're looking at F3 screen here. Right here where this says SC, this is the amount of chunks that are loading around you. This is M is for hostile mobs around you, C is for passive creatures, A is for ambient mobs like bats. First W is for water creatures, the next one's for ambient water creatures, and the last one's for miscellaneous. So not only do they get different caps, but they also have different radiuses in which they can spawn in and despawn in. So the water ambient are your wide variety of different types of fishes, where your water creatures just consist of squid and dolphins. Now before, when they lumped them all together, it was very difficult to kind of separate them, and oftentimes the normal fish would just take up all the mob cap for the squid. But now the normal fish, they don't even spawn in unless you're within 64 blocks, and they will despawn if you're more than 64 blocks. So what I did is I AFK up quite high. No normal fish will spawn in. Only thing that can spawn in is the squid and dolphins. And we're so high up that they can only spawn in a very small area, kind of a little bowl shape right here around the center of this guardian farm. And we have the guardians actually kill off the squid, which produces the ink. A really cool feature that they added with 1.16, and I was able to use this change to make a really simple yet efficient ink and kelp farm. Next up, we're going to take a look at my quick portal pigment farm. This thing allows you to get nuggets, XPs, as well as gold ingots while being AFK. This uses the big portals, so you can even run this on servers where there's so many people online that no mobs spawn in. These guys will constantly keep spawning in pigmen. And the whole design is quite simple, just being the portals and a little bit of redstone down here. Now this design does work in older versions, but one change that they did make for 1.16 is they kind of tweaked the way mobs would decide to walk on stuff like campfires, as well as magma blocks. Because of these changes, even things such as pigmen have a very hard time walking on top of magma blocks, even though they're immune to the fire damage. This is probably a bug, but because of this, I had to remove these type of fire damage blocks from the farm here. Now there is ways to trick them, as CheaterCodes showed with his emerald fox farm, that you could still place like trapdoors on top of magma blocks, and mobs think they can walk on top of the trapdoor, but they end up getting the damage that is produced by the magma block underneath of it. So keep this in mind when you're looking at any type of farms that have fire damaging stuff in them. So because I couldn't go ahead and kill off the chicken jockeys that are produced by this farm. I had to just let them fall down here. And once it got down here, then I have a magma block which kills them. And the baby pigmen which fall off of these guys will despawn down here and they won't be able to get pushed through this hole here because it's too small. And they can despawn because the player is farther than 32 blocks away from them. But the farm still works great. Just start up by hitting one of these guys and they drop down. They die and all XPs will come up from over there. This is a nice way to get gold ingots that you can use for bartering. Next up, we're going to take a look at the easy wither kill or the peaceful wither. You can see right off the bat there's something different from the video where I showed. So they're able to shoot skulls at you. This is because the change that they made in 1.16. So having a block inside of the wither's feet still allows the wither to shoot out skulls. Where in the past, the skulls would immediately explode upon being summoned in. But the wither himself is still not like trying to fly over here and get at the player. The side heads are trying to shoot the player, but the wither himself, like his main head, isn't trying to attack the player. Only once you hit him will he come after you. So the question is, can you still kill a wither easily by doing this? Go ahead and go out of his range. He doesn't shoot if we're this far away. And the idea was you can go up above the wither, then sneak on top of him, and then way up here he can't see you still, and you could drop anvils on him. Let's go ahead and give it a try. We drop about once every second until he is dead. And yeah, it still works, guys. You can easily kill him with just anvils, and all the anvils do end up down here so you can reuse them. The only part that changed about 1.16 is the block being inside his feet, stopping him from shooting out skulls. Next, we'll be taking a look at my simple AFK Wither Rose farm. This farm is quite simple, and we have a wither contained inside a bedrock. Now with that change I talked about, with blocks being inside of the wither's feet, no longer stopping him from shooting out skulls, you can't really turn this farm off like you used to in the past. This also means the wither could get bored and just start shooting skulls all about, including he could happen to turn sideways and shoot downwards and eventually shoot out this cobble wall. Because we don't want that to happen, this new design is needed if you're going to build my Wither Rose farm for 1.16. This is where we have the wither concentrated on this chicken over here by opening up this trap door so he sees it, and then closing it so he can't actually shoot at it. This has to be done every time the wither is loaded, which makes it a bit annoying compared to the old design. But other than that, everything else is pretty simple. You guys did say that sometimes the endermen were attacking the withers when we were dropping them here in this corner in the new 1.16 full release. There might have been some tweaks made to endermen or withers, so it's easy to stop that, which is just putting the drop shaft right over here, because this works exactly the same where the withers are right beside this block, which is a block where the skulls are blown up. So these guys technically die by wither, and then they produce tons of ender pearls as well as wither roses. And that way, with endermen way over here, they're unable to hit the wither who is technically over here. And that way you don't have to worry about any damage done around the area. So if you guys notice any problems, just move your drop shaft over here instead of in the corners. Everything else about the farm is exactly the same. You guys should be able to easily farm up black dye or wither roses plus pearls. Next, I'll take a look at this simple concrete powder to concrete block converter that Activation I worked on. This thing has some small changes for 1.16. The one thing that Exumavoid noticed when he was using this is in 1.16, when you place in blocks into this place right here, this last block that's placed in allows power to go from this torch into the block and then over here to redstone, and then that redstone goes up and around. The new change to 1.16 is redstone pointing both this way as well as pointing backwards now also updates stuff behind it. So this redstone dust is updating this trapdoor here. And the fix that he did was he's just put a lever right here so it never gets updated. Go ahead and give it a try. We just close this and place in the concrete. You can see the trapdoor doesn't move. You can watch it from here too. Everything else works just fine. TNT duper still work in 1.16. Some of you guys are asking how to build this duper. That's something we did forget to show. Build everything up just like the world, except don't put the TNT in. We got the minecart with the rail right there. And then just put the TNT in front. And then when it activates, it will automatically pick it up without updating the TNT. Otherwise, if you just try to place it in there, it'll just try to blow your thing up and you'll lose your TNT. Now, there's also another way you can do this. So by putting the rail over here with a piston, which is going to push it in, and then already have the minecart on it, then push it in, you you also get the same results. Now 1.16 they also did some tweaks to villagers, which actually affect our bee farms here. Normal bee farms that just collect honey or honeycombs aren't really affected, but this one here where we have the villager doing crops and the bees using their pollination abilities to grow up their crops faster than normal. This one actually changed. Before we had the villager down in here and he could reach these crops and harvest them and plant them. Now he no longer does that. He kind of has to walk on top of them in order to do that. So now he walks around inside this area. He's not as efficient because the bees are kind of pushing him around. We don't want him to kind of get stuck in his composter, so we put in a fence underneath, which prevents him from falling down really deep into the center of the composter. Now he's still able to do his crop growing and harvesting. The bees get the honey bottles and the honeycomb. We do have to make these changes, otherwise the villager won't do any growing of the crops. Also, a new thing in this version is that they're able to take some of the crops, put it into the composter, and get bone meal out of it, which you turn around and use to bone meal the crop. Now that's really inefficient if you think about it. They take tons of crops just to get one bone meal that only increases the crop age by a little bit. So it's definitely not really worth it. But sometimes it seems like the villager will actually put crops into the composter rather than continue harvesting. Now 1.16.2 there is going to be a change to do with item elevators. Before there was a chance of items getting stuck just above the soul sand and wouldn't get pushed upwards. Now with that fix, it should be possible to go ahead and build up these item elevators with less complexity. And since the items seem to be moving pretty consistent over top of this ice and into the water bubble column and upwards, we shouldn't really have a problem with items kind of stacking together. So in my lossless item elevator, we should be able to simplify it down to this. The only thing that I could have a problem with is if there's like two items, they decide to stack on top of each other right as they are going across this ice. It could end up getting like put together but stuck right here in one area. So if something like this happens, then you'd want to go with the old system where it pulls these items out. Otherwise, you can go with this system here. Next up, I'd like to show you automatic bell ringing. In 1.16 they changed it so a wide variety of projectiles can now activate a bell. It allows us to make an automatic bell ringer with mobs like snow golems. You can see the snow golem is trying to hit this zombie and he's often hitting this bell, which is kind of in the way. But you can always activate the old way just by using redstone. Now, I do have over 600 videos, so if there is something that you see in one of my videos that doesn't seem to work quite right, and you think it has to do with 1.16, let me know which video you're talking about and what is your problem. The biggest thing is to make sure to use the world download that I provided. With the 1.16 redstone changes, it's very possible for pretty much any type of redstone machine to happen to have redstone in one little wrong spot, which could make it not work the same. And don't forget to share this video with your favorite Minecrafters so they can learn about all the changes that affect the new 1.16 farms, as well as leave a like on the video. I'd like to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye!